So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tim Harlan. I'm a Vice President here at Sedlak, and it's my pleasure to serve as your moderator for this afternoon's session. I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce our panelists. First up, we have Dan Keto, who's the President and Chief Technologies Officer at EasyMetrics. Dan will present an overview of EasyMetrics OptFM platform and how it's used to assist management with the operational visibility across their network. He'll also be highlighting how the dashboard reports can enable management in identifying their cost to serve, employee productivity and missing time, and mapping opportunities for improvement across the network, just to name a few. Our second speaker will be Aaron Eckert. Aaron is the supply chain analyst and supply chain developer for Ferguson Enterprises. Ferguson Enterprises has also successfully implemented EasyMetrics OptFM platform across several of their facilities within their network. Aaron will be discussing examples illustrating how Ferguson has leveraged that data to compare and improve operations. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dan. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. So go ahead and get to our slide here. So first thing is, what is operations financial management? So OpsFM stands for Operations Financial Management, and it's a new way of leveraging your labor management data. And so what we do with OpsFM is we're actually a bridge of communication between the operations and the finance world, because with operations financial management, we've taken the labor management data, which is traditionally more of an industrial engineering data set, and we've converted it into a financial model to really give you deep insights to your business and where cost and performance opportunities are. So what I'll do today is I will walk you through really how we look at the world of data and show you some use cases. And then Aaron's going to go through a detailed use case of how Ferguson uses our data to manage the day-to-day operations of their business and where they identify where these opportunities are to drive savings into their network. So the first thing we like to do is we have a thing, we've developed a model called the OpsFM maturity curve. And what this really does is it maps a technology roadmap for any business who's going from a basic level of data transformation to the elite level of what we call Industry 4.0. So I'm going to talk about the two different bookends first, and then I'll talk about the meat in the middle. So the first level is what we call the basic level, and this is where the majority of companies sit. They have a workflow management system like WMS, TMS, MRP, and they're using that to manage the cadence of their business and the cadence of their product, but they're looking for deeper insights into how to optimize their business and improve efficiencies. On the far end of the spectrum, we call this Industry 4.0, and this was coined by McKinsey, and it's a very advanced way of running your business. And so what this means is you've taken all of the data systems in your enterprise, your automation data, your robotics data, you've elevated all to the cloud, you've transformed it in a real-time basis, so you can basically go from top to bottom analytics of your entire network of facilities in a real-time basis. And then that data is then incorporated into your strategic plan for your business to achieve different objectives like reducing labor costs or improving efficiencies. So what we do is we engage with companies when they're at that basic level, and we start with what we call visualization. So we like to grab the entire network of facilities of data, and we elevate that into a cost and basic performance model, so you can start to see where all the opportunities lie across your network of facilities, both by process and technologies and so forth. So then from the visualization stage, we move into what we call the optimization stage. And this is traditional labor management. This is optimizing your facilities to the processes that they're currently performing. And then from there, we go into what we call the executive stage. And this is where we financialize all of your data. So now you can see where all the cost opportunities are through the performance variances across your network. So facility A and facility B, you might see that there's a $500,000 difference in their picking costs based on labor standard metrics. So with our data model, we can show you the what and the why this is happening, and it gives you an area to focus with that flashlight and say, hey, if we focus here, we can save $500,000. And then eventually we can move companies into the Industry 4.0 where they've establish robotics, put in conveyor systems, and have all these other datafication processes, we can elevate that data into the system to give you that holistic view of your business. So when you look at how we operate differently, is we are a true cloud platform. So we were built and designed for the cloud with modern cloud security involved. So we go to each facility and we grab all the pertinent data that comes through what we call Logic Rider, which is our data transformation engine. So within Logic Rider, we build into that all of the logic to transform the data. We can merge multiple disparate data sets to give you that holistic view of your business. So it goes into a centralized data warehouse. So in the case of Ferguson, they've got 20 or so facilities on our system. They're able to look broad spectrum across their entire network and then drill down to individual activities employees are doing within that network. So it's a very holistic view of everything that is going on in your operations. And through that comparative analysis, you can really see where the efficiency opportunities are with best practices within your facilities. So once we transform that data, it goes into the Easy Metrics application where we have all the reporting and all the visualization suite, but we also export that data into a private data mart. So if for companies that have their own business intelligence teams, you can do all sorts of deeper analytics on the data. So everything in our mind is driven by cost. Ultimately, when you improve productivity, you want to see what your cost to serve go down. So the way we built the data cube is we give you, granular visibility by the transaction, by activity, by facility, by process, by employee, by customer, or by equipment type. So you have all sorts of ways to slice and dice your operation to really understand where the potential opportunities are. Then going into traditional productivity models with labor management, we have a comprehensive labor management system that does both quantitative productivity analysis and utilization, but we also can look at all the qualitative factors. We can look at attendance, we can look at safety, we can look at pick quality. We take all that data and we can also then give you a labor forecast. So if we import your task assignment table from your WMS, we can give you a real-time labor forecast on the floor of where you should be allocating your labor to meet your production goals for the day. And what we're seeing in the market right now is, labor is so constrained, really optimizing the labor by process and by department is becoming very critical. And then finally, we also do pay for performance. That's another key value driver we're seeing in the market today. With the constrained labor market, everyone is trying to figure out, how can I attract higher quality people and pay more money without it increasing my cost structure? So because we take such a cost analytics approach to our data model, combining that with the labor standards, we can create a pay for performance program for clients that will pay for itself through the increased productivity of the employees and thus reduction of cost to serve. So just to give you an idea of how we can dashboard the data, this is an example of a client with looks like 8 facilities on the network. So from a macro perspective, the general manager or the chief operating officer can go in there and they can quickly see how each of their facilities are stack ranking against all their other facilities and where the different cost opportunities are. And then you can drill down into a granular data where I can look at, intraday real time and see what is going on and which associates I need to address and say, hey, we've got some problems here. What can we do to improve? And then we have these, we can also see the associates who are producing, at a high optimum level. Then we can go into budget models. So to the executive dashboard stage of OpsFM maturity curve, we can build your budget for your operation in here. And then we can show you how you are performing against your budget. So then you can see, if I miss budget, was it because of a workflow change, or was it because of just poor productivity? Again, it's the what and the why of what is going on in your operation. And so often, one of the things we saw during the pandemic is companies were forced to quickly respond to all the demands for e-commerce. Well, as everyone knows, e-commerce is a much higher cost structure on a per unit ship basis than when you're doing bulk ship to retail. So all of a sudden, the cost models blew out of the water to budget. Well, with an analytics model like this, you're able to see really what is going on and what different workflow factors cause the acceleration of your cost structure to miss budget. Likewise, we can do the same thing in the 3PL industry. We can bring through the revenue items of the services, and we can show you what we call profit to serve. So we know what all the cost analytics are for all the services you're performing. We can then bring in the associated revenue items, and we can show you a daily gross margin, contribution gross margin for all the activities that you've done for the day. Then we can go into deeper analytics. So now I'm comparing all of my facilities against each other. And so if I'm looking at, in this use case, I'm looking at, the potential process savings. If I can get all my facilities to perform at the best process level of my best-in-class facilities. So in this example, for this 3-month period, this client left $2 million of potential savings on the table if they could take their other facilities and get them to perform at the benchmark level of their best process performance. So we can drill down a little deeper from that, and we can then go into which are the processes where the biggest economic opportunity is. So when you look at the model from a pure labor standard perspective, you'll see that, hey, on, say on bulk cartons, no label, I might be performing at 65%, but it's such a small process compared to, each pick for carts, that really, even though I could double the productivity there, it's not going to save me money. But if I can save, improve productivity by 5% on my cart picking, then there's a potential 733,000, in savings in that network. So then we can go down even deeper, and we can look at each of the individual facilities and see by process where that economic opportunity is. And what this does is it helps you focus where you can drive the most savings in the business. And so everything is about visibility now and elevating your data, in a near real-time basis to do these analytics so you can make the right decisions. And so I'd like to go, we'll go ahead and pass this off to Aaron now. Just want to talk a little bit about Ferguson, because we work with hundreds of companies. Hands down, they're probably one of the most sophisticated companies we've seen in the use of data and how they incorporate that into the daily cadence of how they run their company. And it's very impressive. And so I'm looking forward to, Aaron walking through his use cases. So Aaron, we'll turn that over to you now.
Okay. As Dan said, we've rolled out several facilities with Easy Metrics. We started back in 2018, and they were an attractive option to us because at that time we had been doing more local site-based access database reporting for productivity and trying to piece everything together. And it wasn't a really good, flow for us from an executive standpoint to be able to look at all facilities and see how we're doing as an organization within our regional distribution center network. So what Easy Metrics brought to the table that was nice for us was we didn't have engineered standards at the time. So with Easy Metrics, we didn't need engineered standards to be able to start using more of a data-driven standard than a single transaction point or single metric point, so to speak. So for us, historically, it was transactions per hour. Well, transactions per hour doesn't give you the full picture of what's going on with your work. So like I said, we started back in about 2018, the end of 2018, we finished the first pilot, and then we rolled Easy Metrics out to all the other 9 regional distribution centers that we had at the time within or before August. So in about an 8-month period, we completed 10 facilities. So it was a pretty quick implementation period, went really well, I think, overall. And what Easy Metrics allowed us to do, as Dan explained earlier, is having access to all of your data in that data mart is very important for us, as we have leveraged that data in many ways. So on this first slide, we're looking at one of the important things is, at least for us, is, keep it, the KISS, especially at executive level. we have key metrics that we focus on, and then we have the ability to go through and drill down to other levels of detail if we need to. So for us, we have this executive level report that our executive management and the supply chain meets every week and goes over the weekly report. So in the screenshot, you see the East Coast facilities for our regional distribution centers. And we basically have 4 key metrics. We have our touches per hour, we have our building performance, work content, other, and then what the net impact is. So touches per hour is pretty straightforward. Our throughput touches approach is we take put away transactions. So I've gotten it, I've received it all the way in and put it away, and then picking activity. And those particular touches based off of how we calculate a touch. So it's broken out at PPQs. So if I handle an each, it's an each. If I handle a pack, it's a pack. If it's a handle a case, it's a case, pallet, etc. So we benchmark ourselves comparing to the previous year. And so TPH is one of our most important to see, are we getting better or are we getting worse? But touches per hour as a metric, a single metric does not tell the whole story of what's going on in the facility. Am I winning? Am I losing? The next metric is building performance. So we take earned hours based on the standards compared to the total warehouse hours. So that metric there we use to, just tell how the facility is doing as a whole with all the hours included. Work content, that's how many throughput touches I do per earned hour. So this is looking at how I'm doing from a touch standpoint to the standards. And then the other is the variance that we can't tell necessarily where it comes from through this analysis by subtracting the building performance plus the work content change. And then net impact is our touches per hour year over year minus the work content, just to see the overall net impact. So the work content is important because I may be going down in touches per hour. So for example, I've heard several folks discuss on a call about e-commerce. When e-commerce picks up, it changes kind of how your business is. So for us, we were primarily, back in 2008 at least, a branch replenishment type distribution network. And for us, the housing market is a very big market. So when that crashed, that caused some pain for us. So since we've diversified drastically on what we do, so we do a lot of e-commerce. And then with COVID, e-commerce definitely became more impactful. So this is where you're looking right now at the current fiscal year, we're showing down in touches per hour. And it looks like, wow, we're not doing great. But then when I take the work content, so how many touches I'm doing against my earned hours, I'm down as well. So my work has gotten harder. So if I look at that facility 761 in the middle, they're down 2.4%. So it looks like they're not winning. However, my work content has gone harder by almost 14%, just based off the change in mix of the business. So with the executive level, detail, executive level activity-based cause of change KPIs. One thing that's important that we found that we have to do is we have to normalize the data. Because when I do a year over year comparison, I might have changed standards, I may have changed process, I may have done several things over, throughout the course that can leave it to be misconstrued as far as what my true change is. So what we do is we normalize the hours by taking all the activity for the time period I'm comparing from the previous year, and we apply the same standards that were active at the end of the year. And then that's what our new earned hours is. So if you look at that first example, my standard change had an impact of -7% or -0.7%. So when I adjust my earned hours by that, I'm up to 15,041. So that's the number I use for that, any of the building performance or work content, which uses earned hours. And then vice versa for the current year, we take the standard at the beginning of the year and apply that standard to all my metrics for the period in the current year. So this way I have the same standard starting point to do a true comparison of what my earned is year over year. as far as change goes. So in our facilities, we have industrial engineers at each one of the regional distribution centers. We do have some market DCs where I might have one industrial engineer handling multiple sites. But at the regional distribution center on a monthly basis, I mean, just a lesson learned for us. We started out trying to do weekly action plans, but you spend more time filling out an action plan than you spend actually analyzing what's going on and, you know, making a kind of changes that can impact positive change. So our industrial engineers, they once a month, they fill out an action plan that goes over all their month's performance for the previous month and provides several data points for that. Really, it doesn't give them a lot of detail, but it gives them an idea of where to go look. So within this action plan, they can actually go in and they'll put their inputs into what their observations are, what the actions are, and when those actions are due. And then we follow up with that because that records it within a Dataverse table that we use. So we use Power, the Microsoft Power Platform from our organization standpoint. So we use Power BI, Power Apps, Azure. So once they fill that, or when they're filling that out, like I said, that particular action plan gives them a lot of data that lets them know where to go look. So in that previous executive level, I'm just comparing two facilities, one that was winning, you know, when I look at my total change or net impact, and one that was losing. So in this first example, I can tell that, well, their net impact was down by 8.5%. And when I look at their action plan, I can see that 60% of their experienced associates are performing below expectation. So, and to add to that, they have 22% of associates that fell into a new hire tenure. So from a staffing standpoint, I can tell I've got an issue with turnover if I've got 31 folks or 22%. And then I've got an issue with associates that are tenured that are underperforming. So the labor market is impactful. And that's been one of our struggles, at least, of, you know, prior to COVID, we would have done, you know, we would have trimmed the fat. So your bottom 10% typically, you know, as you improve as an organization or a location and for performance, you don't need that extra labor. But we find now with COVID, you hang on to labor a little bit longer just to have a body in the building to do work. So in that particular example, I can't blame overtime because they were down 37% from the previous year. So I'm not overworking the associates. I've just got an issue with experienced associates that are underperforming. So then that discussion piece between that facility leadership and executive leadership would be, how do we approach that? You know, how do we make that better? And in comparison, I look at the second, you know, facility, they had a 9.3% increase in their net impact. So they're doing 9.3% better when I look year over year for performance. And I only see 17% of their experienced associates are below, you know, the expectation. And only, you know, 8% roughly are new hires. So from a personnel standpoint, they're doing better with their experienced associates, as well as their tenure is far lower than that first facility. So it just helps to explain what's going on in that building and how can we go about addressing those issues. And with Easy Metrics, it's important when you start looking at performance that you're monitoring that performance and your standards. So we do what's called standard flash maintenance. So our RIEs are responsible, again, on a monthly basis. They're looking at their processes in their facilities and what their ELS is. And if they fall out of a range, they have to do a reconciliation for that. So we have to identify, okay, what's the root cause of that? You know, and what do I need to do? Because it's not necessarily, okay, I just need to re-optimize. Business has changed. It could be folks not being on process. You know, it could be any number of things that aren't tied to, I need to re-optimize. So within the standard flash maintenance report that we have, you have a facility summary, and it just goes over, you know, the important thing is how many processes are out of tolerance requiring a reconnaissance or recon, and how many have had their recon created. So in this example, there were 3 in Front Royal, our 423 facility, and they actually created 4. So they created two different reconciliations for one of the processes because they were having issues. And then in the process detail, you can see the individual processes that were out of tolerance. And it breaks down several different, you know, important parts, you know, as a percentage of department hours. Because one thing we take into account is what's the percentage of department hours for a process. So if it's a process we don't do very much of, and it's hard to get a good standard, we might not necessarily need to dig down into that because it's not impacting the overall performance, because it's not really utilizing a lot of those hours for the department. And you know, it breaks out how many dates, you know, that process occurred, how many different associates did it, and whether or not the recon was done, and what the status is of it. Because within that recon, there's an industrial engineer step that has to be taken, and then there's an ops step that has to be taken. So the IE may need to, for example, go monitor the process, see what's going on, and whatever things they identify. Now it becomes that working relationship between the IE and the ops team to execute on whatever the plan is to correct that particular issue with that process being out of tolerance. So this is an example of that standard flash maintenance, what those IEs are entering into a Microsoft Power App. So again, it goes into what type of changes need, or what was the impact? Was it an associate? Was it the manager? Was it a standard issue? Was it systematic? Because we use high jump WMS. I think it's called Corber now. And so there may be, like I said, several different reasons that I might have an issue with that process, which is causing that ELS to be out of that tolerance range. So they have the IAs fill out, okay, what's the root cause? After they did their observation, what's the action the IE is going to take? What's the status? And when's the due date, as well as what the operations action needs to be and what the status is for that. And also, again, gives you basic information, when it was created, when it was modified. So in this example, you can see it's created on 124 and the IE updated or modified it on 214. So there was follow-up on this action plan. Now, we also have additional reporting. This is getting more down into the weeds. So that the first slide was the high level. The second slide was getting down to the facility leadership, digging down into, okay, what's causing my change, and where do I need to go look? And now we're getting more into the detail where we can actually go research and slice and dice the data to try to find whatever's causing a particular issue. So the IEs can dig into it through this process metric totals report. And like I said, we slice and dice this data many different ways. So just from this filters pane on this one particular page of the process metric totals report, I can slice and dice it. What level do I want to look at? Do I want to look at the facility? Do I want to look at the network? Same goes for department. What type of prod model? What kind of metric level? You know, supervisor. So there's a lot of items that we have the ability to go drill down into the data to try to identify what's going on. So, and this is an example of, I broke down those two facilities that were in the executive level reporting on the first slide, just breaking down their picking department at the prod model level. So I'm looking at OP picking versus bulk RT picking. So within this particular report here, this is calculated metrics. So now we're starting to get down into What's the travel per location they're doing? What's the lokes per hour? How many touches are they doing for each location they go to? So, I mean, just a plethora of data that they can dig into. So, for example, that low location, medium location, high location, a lot of this helps us identify where we maybe have configuration issues in a facility. So if I'm doing 15, 20% more travel in this location, I'm doing at all the others, we need to look how their facility is configured and where they have product located. Same goes for that, low, medium, high. So we use 28-foot racking and we break that up into pretty much 3 levels. So that way we can start to identify, if I'm picking stuff on an order picker up high, that's an issue. I mean, are we keeping up on our replenishment, work queues and all those good things?
So what I think, Aaron is showing here is really, that forward thinking, what forward thinking companies are doing. Facebook and Google and these guys figured out years ago the value of consumer data and have monetized it in the tune of trillions of dollars now of equity value. And so now I think the next big evolution is taking workflow and business data and mining the gold in there. So as you can see with what Aaron showed us there, using a data-driven approach to analyzing their business, they are able to find where the inefficiencies are, where the problems are, much faster and much more accurately than trying to send people out there to do observations. So once they know the what and the why, then they can address those issues. And as you showed, here's our engineer's action plan to correct these inefficiencies that we've discovered. So really, this is the future of where all businesses are going. And I think companies, unless they're in a really protected market, unless they start taking a data-driven approach to running their businesses, will find the competitive pressures to be very difficult. So I guess, Tim, we can pass it back to you. We can open up for any questions.
Okay. I appreciate the input, Dan and Aaron. I'll just start off with a couple of questions here, and hopefully perhaps the group will have some to add. But this first question is for you, Dan. With respect to ERP, WMS, time and attendance, and/or TMS, can you expand a bit on the typical system providers you routinely work with and extract operational data from, and how you minimize interface and perhaps data format issues?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a great question. So when we first started this company, one of the biggest challenges was the integration layer with the WMS systems. And so, or TMS too, they're all very similar. So you'll find that a common table in every single of those data systems is the table that the RF scan guns write to. It's basically the transactional table that records all the different activities. So that's the data that we extract from any of these systems. And I believe, integrated with about 50 different types of WMS systems. And it's a pretty common data model there. So we run that through our integration tool called Logic Writer that allows us to basically model and conform the data to our system without a custom code layer. Traditional system hookups, when you're doing something like this, traditionally requires a lot of custom code, and it becomes a very expensive, intense process. So we, in a sense, have automated all of that. And because we've worked with all the big players, the Oracles, SAPs, Blue Yonders, Manhattans, High Jumps, and so forth, we've already got the parsing models set up to be able to handle that data. So once we map the data ingestion, it's generally a very light lift on the IT side of the client, because we just ask for a query extract to the time period that they need from their WMS. We then do all the other work. So that's why we're able to roll out for Ferguson, those 10 facilities in that 8-month period. And subsequently, I think we've rolled out another 15 or so facilities. So we take a very streamlined process to get clients up and running. And because of the adaptive nature of our integration tool, we can change as your business changes. So adding new processes, splitting a picking process into multiple processes like each pick, case pick, pallet pick, it can be done on the fly, and then we can recalibrate the standards and recalibrate the model very quickly without going through your normal intensive development cycle, because it's all encapsulated within the logic of the system. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Dan. Aaron, this question's for you. Can you share a bit about Ferguson's journey over the past several years with respect to perhaps lessons learned, anything around productivity improvement percentages, if you're able to share that, and then lastly, what perhaps your next planned steps are in the evolution of your data usage? I'm sure others in the audience are curious to hear that.
All right. So, I mean, our journey with, at least with Easy Metrics, like I said, prior to us implementing Easy Metrics, we just had old systems, old ways of trying to track productivity. It wasn't necessarily the fairest to the associates, because, I mean, that we used to see, we used to use picking labels. We're now labelless, but you would have associates, kind of try to cherry pick the labels, because you could tell if I had a big stack of labels, it's not going to be a great batch. If I got that nice single label, it's going to be a nice 60 line, easy, lightweight, easy pick for me. So, I mean, you ran into challenges, or at least we did, with, associates finding fairness with like our incentive program. And, when folks were held against having poor productivity from a single point metric, such as transactions per hour, you'd have that fairness discussion where someone's like, all I get is the hard work. All I'm doing is picking these heavy steel weld fittings while this guy's picking faucets all day. So you had a lot of those kind of discussions that made it challenging from a management standpoint of, really trying to address poor performance maybe, as well as knowing how am I truly performing. Transactions per hour doesn't tell me am I winning or losing. So one of the great things that we found with Easy Metrics, and one of the biggest pieces, is the missing time. Because within Easy Metrics, you have gap time settings, and once you go past the threshold, it takes that time out of your process when you do your next activity and puts it into a bucket called missing time. So that missing time percentage becomes very important when you start looking at it. Where's my opportunity to save money? So if I have a guy, for example, who every day takes off and goes to the bathroom for 15 minutes and he doesn't log his time, that, hey, I'm exiting for a break, which is an indirect particular process, but he's just trying to disappear, he's going to be held accountable with his missing time. So it really helps management to dig down into where are my hours going, and then what am I doing from a work perspective. So, that example where associate complaining, all I get is the hard work. Now everybody's compared to the same standard. I get credit for how many touches I do, how much weight, how much volume, how much travel I do, how much vertical travel I have to do. So it's a much more fair standard for the associates to be held accountable to, and to ensure that they're given proper credit for the work that they do. So that's been a huge piece from the associate side of it. From a management side, it's been great because we have implemented incentives. So we have an incentive program that leverages Easy Metrics data that has allowed us to see a significant increase. I mean, some facilities, like you saw that Frostproof facility on the presentation, a lot of that was driven from the incentive program from last year, because now they know if I truly try to do my best, I can earn more money. So we have a tiered level, incentive program that is very lucrative. I mean, there's some folks making some really good money that are good performers. Easy Metrics was an eye opener for us because, like I said, the old productivity model, I might have folks that look like all-stars, And we went on easy metrics, and you realized they're really not the best performers. They're good at making themselves look good. They're good at doing the cherry picking type activity. But once they were held to the same standard as everybody else, you saw them fall behind. And maybe some folks that looked like they were struggling, actually, they're performing very well. So it painted a true picture of, what's going on in the facility. And like I said, the missing time piece, which is one of the earliest things at the beginning of rolling out easy metrics at a facility, really gives you that view of where is all my time going and how much am I truly wasting? Because I can tell how well I'm doing when I'm doing a task based off of the standards. But then you have the time that I'm not applied to a standard that becomes very important from a labor saving standpoint. So, I mean, for us, it's been very, very positive. The one challenge I would say that we've had is, what size facility we put it in. So we've tried to put it into some of our smaller branches. And it's a challenge from the standpoint of like a regional or market distribution center. I'm doing a flow of product through the building. I've got somebody receiving it, hands off to somebody putting away, or maybe I direct put it away. Then I have someone picking it, they drop it off on the dock, and someone on the ship dock takes it, whether it be a consolidator or a loader loading it. Well, in a branch, you have folks wear multiple hats, so the processes aren't as easy to necessarily drill down into. And it's harder at a smaller location, I think. From our standpoint, it's just been a challenge to maintain the data and make sure that folks are doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. We have time for one last question, and this is for you, Dan. So for those viewers that utilize engineered labor standards today with either a current or perhaps an outdated LMS package, how can Easy Metrics support engineered labor standards now and or in the future on your platform?
So the model, we fully support engineered labor standards, but we're also leveraging data. So we have a data solver tool that uses advanced regression modeling and correlation studies that allows you to look at each of the metrics and its correlation to the labor standard. And then the system will tell you what the optimal optimal configuration and coefficient is for each of those metrics. So for engineers, it's a very useful tool because it greatly speeds up the effort of designing the standards for a facility, and more importantly, maintaining those standards. Because we need roughly 1,000 data points on a process to run a full calibration model. And so, engineers have a tendency when they're building the standard from the ground up to try to grab as much information as possible, meaning what are all the possible metrics associated with this process? And then they'll work through and calibrate the standard that way. But by using advanced analytics, we can tell them which of those processes, which of those metrics really have a strong correlation to the process and which metrics really don't have a correlation. And so it simplifies the development of that standard and the maintenance of the standard. So we have clients who rely solely on the data-driven standards. And then we have clients like Ferguson who have their engineering teams who then can work also with the data tools to help them develop the standards at a more cost-effective basis.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. I'd also like to thank both you, Dan and Aaron, for your time this afternoon and your very informative presentation. At this point, I'll turn it over to Lou for closing remarks.
Okay, well, again, I'll repeat what Tim said. Thank you, Dan and Aaron, for your time. We appreciate that. And the insight, obviously, labor and controlling the labor and properly awarding associates is key to making sure that people do, in fact, stay with an organization and are successful. So that really concludes our exercises in terms of the sessions for today. I'd certainly encourage you to go out and visit the booths that are out there to learn a little bit more about our sponsors. And we welcome your attendance again tomorrow as we'll go over topics with AMRs and the kind of some of the future visioning as well as G2P. So Between the goods person, AMRs, and just general future visioning, we look forward to having your attendance tomorrow. We thank you for your time and attendance today. Hopefully there's been some key takeaways that you'll be able to add value to your organizations as part of participating. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care now. Goodbye.